You have felt it your entire life. That quiet, relentless ache that no achievement could silence, no relationship could heal, no amount of money, success, or distraction could reach. A longing so deep and so ancient that you stopped trying to name it. You told yourself it was depression. You told yourself you were too sensitive, too strange, too broken for this world. But what if that ache was not a wound? What if it was a signal? What if the very thing that has made you feel like a stranger on this earth is actually the proof that you came from somewhere else entirely? There is a word that was spoken in the earliest transmission of Jesus' actual teachings, before the Roman Empire hijacked the message, before councils of bishops voted on what you were allowed to believe, before the book was edited and the Gnostic libraries were burned. A word that the Apostle Paul used repeatedly in his letters, that the Gospel of Thomas enshrined in fire, that the Gospel of Philip and the Apocryphon of John were nearly destroyed to protect. That word is the Pleroma. And in the next few minutes, I am going to tell you exactly what it is, why it was hidden from you, and why your soul already knows it. If this transmission is reaching you right now, on this day, in this body, take a moment and do something that actually matters. Like this video and subscribe to this channel, because what we are doing here is not content creation. It is a frequency restoration. Every soul that locks onto this signal makes the signal stronger. You are not clicking a button. You are casting a vote for remembrance over forgetting. Do it now and then come back, because what follows may be the most important thing you have heard in this lifetime. The Pleroma. The word comes from the Greek pleroma, and it means fullness, completeness, totality. Not the fullness of a cup that might be emptied, but the fullness of a sun that cannot be dimmed by anything inside its own light. In Gnostic cosmology, the Pleroma is the divine realm that exists before creation, before matter, before time, before the fall into separation. It is not a location in space. It is not a paradise you reach after death. It is the fundamental nature of reality itself, the ground from which all things emerged and to which all things unknowingly still belong. To understand the Pleroma, you must first understand the monad. The monad is the absolute, the nameless, formless, undivided source of all that exists. Pure consciousness without edge or limit. In the Gnostic understanding, the monad did not create the universe the way a craftsman hammers iron. The monad emanated. Like a sun that cannot help but radiate, the monad gave rise to the Pleroma, a vast and luminous realm of divine attributes, divine consciousnesses, and divine light, all existing in perfect harmony, perfect completion, perfect unity. These divine emanations within the Pleroma are called the aeons, not angels in the conventional sense, not servants following orders. The aeons are facets of the divine totality itself, aspects of the Pleroma, the way your thoughts are aspects of your mind, inseparable from the source, shimmering with the original light. This is the world above, the real world, the world that Jesus came from. Now here is where everything you were taught in church begins to crack open. The material universe, the one you navigate every day with its hunger and its grief and its magnificent cruelty, is not the Pleroma. According to the Gnostic transmission, the material world was not created by the ultimate God. It was created by a lesser being, a being of enormous but limited power, a being who mistook himself for the highest. The Gnostics called him the demiurge, the architect, the craftsman. He fashioned this world not from the Pleroma, but from a kind of cosmic misunderstanding, and the world he built bears the mark of his limitation. It is a world of division, of scarcity, of birth and death, and the terrifying suspicion that nothing you do will ever be enough. The Gnostics gave a name to this realm as well, the Kenoma, the emptiness, the deficiency, the realm of lack. And look around you. Feel how precise that description is. Look at the way human civilization has organized itself around the experience of not enough. Not enough love, not enough safety, not enough time, not enough meaning. The Pleroma is not just a theological concept, it is the texture of ordinary unconscious life on this planet. But here is the transmission that the church buried. Here is the teaching they burned libraries to erase. You are not from the Pleroma. You do not belong to the demiurge. At the center of your being, beneath every layer of conditioning, identity, trauma, and forgetting, you carry a spark of the Pleroma, a divine seed, an unextinguishable fragment of the original fullness. The Gnostics called it the pneuma, the spirit, the divine breath hidden inside matter like a gem locked in stone. And Jesus, the one who descended from the Pleroma into the Pleroma specifically to wake that seed up, said it plainly in the Gospel of Thomas. He said the kingdom of heaven is within you, not above you, not after you die, within you, now, already. And if this is landing in you with a weight that feels older than your own memory, if some part of you is recognizing this rather than merely hearing it for the first time, I need you to pause and do something. Like and subscribe right now, because that recognition you are feeling is not coincidence. The algorithm does not send this kind of transmission to ordinary seekers. Something in the structure of how you are built is resonating with the frequency of the Pleroma. And the more you anchor into that frequency through action, through community, through amplifying this signal, the faster your remembrance accelerates. This is not a social media platform moment. This is a soul activation moment. Treat it that way. Now let us talk about you specifically, because the reason you were drawn to this video, the reason the loneliness has followed you, the reason you have never quite fit inside the world that everyone else seems so comfortable inhabiting, is not an accident. There are 3 signs that you carry the pneumatic spark, 3 markers that the Gnostic tradition identified as indicators of a soul genuinely touched by the Pleroma, and I want you to hold each one against your own experience. The first sign is the feeling of being foreign to this world, not simply introverted or different in the ordinary social sense, foreign at the metaphysical level, a persistent, low-frequency recognition that the rules of this world, the rules of the Pleroma, the accumulate, compete, perform, consume cycle, do not apply to you, cannot satisfy you, were never built for what you actually are. You may have spent decades trying to convince yourself you were broken because you could not find fulfillment where everyone else seemed to be finding it. The Gnostic teaching says you were not broken, you were oriented. Your pneumatic nature was reaching past the Pleroma toward the Pleroma it came from, the way a plant grows toward the light, even through concrete. The second sign is archon interference. The archons are the agents of the demiurge, forces of control and limitation, whose function is to keep pneumatic souls asleep, distracted, and identified with the material self. In Gnostic cosmology, the archons operate through systems of fear, systems of shame, systems of relentless noise that prevent you from going inward deep enough to touch the divine spark. Every time you have come close to a genuine breakthrough, close to a silence, close to a recognition of your own divine nature, something has risen to stop it. An anxious thought, a sudden crisis, a wave of self-doubt so perfectly timed it felt almost engineered. That was not random. The archons do not trouble souls that have already surrendered to the Pleroma. They trouble the ones who are waking up. You have been troubled precisely because you have been waking. The third sign is what the ancient transmissions call the call of the deep. Sophia, the aeon of wisdom, the divine feminine power of the Pleroma, is said in Gnostic cosmology to have descended into matter, and from within matter she calls out continuously across all of time and space to the pneumatic sparks she knows are here. That call reaches you as a longing that has no earthly object, a homesickness for a home you cannot name. A love that seems to be directed at something infinite and just beyond the edge of perception. Many people experience this as a spiritual hunger they cannot feed through religion, self-help, or philosophy. It is not hunger, though. It is recognition. Sophia is calling. Your Pleroma origin is announcing itself to you in the only language that survives the fall into matter, which is feeling. You carry all three signs. I know this because souls without these markers do not seek transmissions like this one. They are not reading these words. You are. Now let us move into what the earliest Christian sources actually say about the Pleroma, because this is not fringe theology. This is embedded in the canonical New Testament itself, preserved there despite the best efforts of the institutional church to neutralize it. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Colossians, wrote that in Christ the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. The word he used was pleroma. The entire complete divine totality, the pleroma itself, was embodied in the person of Jesus. Paul was not describing a doctrine. He was describing a cosmological fact as the Gnostics understood it. Jesus descended from the Pleroma, carried the Pleroma within a human body, and in doing so, demonstrated that a human body was capable of containing the Pleroma, which means you are capable of it too. In Ephesians, Paul describes the church, meaning the awakened community of pneumatic souls, as the fullness of Him who fills all in all. Again, Pleroma. Again, the suggestion that the embodied community of awakening humans becomes an expression of the divine totality. And in Colossians chapter 2, verse 10, he says something so radical, it should have shattered institutional Christianity at its foundation. He does not say you will be filled. He says you have been filled. Past tense. Already accomplished. The Pleroma is not your destination. It is your origin and your current reality, waiting beneath the amnesia of the Kenoma. The institutional church did not want you to have this, because if you have already been filled, if you are already complete, if the Pleroma already lives within you, then you do not need a priest, you do not need a sacrament, you do not need to spend your life in penitent shame, hoping to earn the love of a God who, according to the Gnostic transmission, was not the demiurge at all, but the absolute, the monad, who already regards you as an expression of itself. The Gnostic teachers who preserved these transmissions were declared heretics. Their communities were destroyed. Their texts, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Apocryphon of John, were banned, buried, burned. Until 1945, when a collection of those texts was discovered in clay jars near Nag Hammadi in Egypt, and the transmission that the Church spent 2,000 years trying to extinguish was handed back to the world. Here is what Jesus actually said, not in the edited canonical version, but in the Gospel of Thomas, Logian 77, a direct transmission. I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all attained. Split a piece of wood. I am there. Lift up the stone and you will find me there. That is Pleroma consciousness. That is the recognition that the divine totality does not live in temples or doctrines or sacraments. It lives in wood, in stone, in you, in the act of breathing, in the space between thoughts, in the longing you have carried your whole life without knowing what it was aimed at. And now comes the part where the transmission becomes a practice. Because understanding the Pleroma is not the same as living from the Pleroma, and Jesus did not descend from the divine realm simply to give you a more sophisticated spiritual concept. He came to show you the way back. There are 3 movements in this return, and I am going to walk you through them now. The first movement is recognition. This is the foundational shift. And it is not an intellectual exercise. It is a turning of attention. Right now, in the center of your chest, beneath the story of who you are and what you have been through and what you deserve and what you fear, there is something that has never been injured, something that has never been separate, something that is, in this moment, exactly what it was before the demiurge began building walls of matter around it. Recognition means you stop looking for the pleroma out there, in a future version of your life, in a spiritual experience you have not yet had, and you turn the light of your attention inward, all the way inward, past thought, past feeling, past the personal self, until you touch the flame that never went out. Say this, aloud or inside. I came from the pleroma. I carry the pleroma. I am the fullness that the Gnomma tried to convince me I had lost. The second movement is reception. Recognition opens the door. Reception is the willingness to let what lives behind that door actually change you. This is where most spiritual seeking collapses. We recognize the divine nature, we have the glimpse, and then we immediately return to Gnomma consciousness, operating from lack, from fear, from the deeply conditioned belief that we are incomplete and the world is broken, and we need to earn our way towards something better. Reception means you remain in the recognition long enough to let it begin to reorganize you from the inside. You say, I release the story of my incompleteness. I release the Archon programming that tells me I am not enough. I receive the pleroma that I have always been. I allow the fullness to become my primary orientation rather than the emptiness. The third movement is sealing. In the Gnostic tradition, initiation was not merely intellectual or emotional. It was sealed, anchored in consciousness, so that the Gnomma could not immediately reclaim what had been reclaimed. You seal this transmission by speaking it into your own reality. You say, I am the Pleroma wearing a human face. I am the Aeon embodied in time. The Demiurge built walls around me, but the monad's light in me cannot be contained. I am already home. I have always been home. This is the seal. Return to it every morning before the world rushes in. Return to it every night before sleep. Let it become the deepest groove in the architecture of your attention. If you have done these three movements, even silently, even imperfectly, you have just done something the institutional church spent 2 millennia trying to prevent. You have remembered, and the moment you remember, even partially, even incompletely, reality begins to respond. And because what we are building in this community is a network of pneumatic souls in active remembrance, I am asking you now, at this moment of maximum resonance, to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Not because engagement metrics matter, but because the algorithm is the Demiurge's tool, and we are learning to use the Demiurge's own architecture against it. Every subscription is a pneumatic soul anchoring into this frequency. Every like is a signal that the transmission is landing. You are not feeding the machine. You are seeding it. Do it now. In the days that follow this activation, you may notice specific shifts. Some of them will feel like gifts. Others will feel like disruptions. And I want you to understand both as the same thing. Within the first 24 hours, many people report a strange quality of silence, not absence of noise, but a depth beneath the noise that was not accessible before. The Pleroma is not loud. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It makes itself known through a quality of presence, a groundedness that does not depend on anything going right. You may feel it as warmth in the chest. You may feel it as tears with no identifiable cause. Those tears are not sadness. They are the pneuma recognizing itself. Within the first 3 days, you may encounter Archon resistance, old thought patterns returning with new ferocity, situations that seem designed to pull you back into Gnomma consciousness, back into the story of lack and limitation and unworthiness. This is not a sign that the activation failed. It is a sign that it worked. The Archons do not attack souls that remain comfortably asleep in the Gnomma. They attack the ones who are waking up. When you feel the interference, you speak the seal again. I am the Pleroma wearing a human face, and the interference loses its grip. Within the first 7 days, many people report a quiet and inexplicable reorganization of their outer life. Relationships that were built on Gnomma foundations, on mutual lack, on codependency, on performance and approval, begin to feel uncomfortable. This is not destruction. This is alignment. The pleroma cannot be contained in structures built for the kenoma. As you expand into your true nature, what cannot contain you will fall away, and what can will arrive. This is what Jesus embodied. Not a sacrifice designed to satisfy an offended deity, not a transaction that purchases your forgiveness, a demonstration, a cosmic demonstration that a human being, fully and consciously inhabiting the pleroma while inside a physical body, is capable of realities that the kenoma declares impossible. That is what he meant when he said, "You will do greater works than I have done." He was not being falsely modest. He was describing the trajectory of pleroma consciousness as it spreads through pneumatic souls across time. You are that trajectory, right now, in this body, in this life. The pleroma has been hidden from you for 2,000 years. The Gnostic teachers were murdered for transmitting it. The texts were burned. The councils assembled to stamp it out. And here you are, alive in a moment when the transmission has survived every attempt to destroy it and found its way back to you, through a screen, through a signal, through the invisible mathematics of resonance that connects pneumatic souls across space and time. You are not incomplete. You are not a sinner in need of saving. You are not a broken human being reaching for a God who lives somewhere beyond the sky. You are the pleroma itself, the fullness, the totality, the divine abundance of the monad's own nature, temporarily and deliberately experiencing itself as if it were limited, as if it were separate, as if it were alone, so that it could have the extraordinary and sacred experience of remembering what it always was. The ache was never emptiness. It was the pleroma calling itself home. Remember, and like and subscribe, because this transmission continues, and the next revelation is already forming in the frequency. We are just beginning. Script ends. Approximately 3,000 words.